The signal came in on channel null, not a frequency anyone monitored anymore. Not since the old survey teams had retired the pre-stellar band designations 4,000 years ago. But Kelhari Supply Terminus still listened on every channel ever assigned to it, because that was the standing order. And standing orders at Kelhari did not expire. They accumulated. 520,000 years of them, layer on layer, the way sediment accumulates at the bottom of a deep and patient sea. I was running morning calibration on the Eastern Distribution Rail, Section 44, the Varath feed lines, which had been pulling 0.5% low on throughput since the last maintenance cycle, when the terminal at my left elbow chimed once and printed a single line in the old Vethion logistics script. Resupply collection order. Vault Series Keth 9 through Keth 44. Present inventory for audit. Compliance window. 40 standard hours. I read it twice. Then I pulled up the Terminus Archive Index, cross-referenced the vault designation against the Foundation survey records, and understood what I was looking at. I patched them through to the planetary grid and sent a response on channel null. Kelhari Supply Terminus acknowledges. Please descend to Terminus Platform 1. I will meet you. My name is Solon Dre. I have been Terminus Station Chief for 31 years. My mother held the post before me, her father before her. The Dre family has administered Kelhari Supply Terminus for 6 generations, which is a long time by any human measure, and an eye blink against the age of what we stand on. The Vethion Logistics Reclamation Authority sent one vessel down, a mid-class supply auditor, clean lines, the Vethion Authority seal on the hull in the same script as the resupply order, a bureaucratic ship, not a warship, which told me a great deal about what they were expecting to find. They had come to collect inventory, not to fight. It had not occurred to them that the inventory might have an opinion. The supply master's name, in as close an approximation as our translation systems could render it, was Varath Solon, not a warrior, an administrator. He wore the authority's audit robes, carried a documentation tablet in the crook of one arm, and looked at the Terminus platform the way a man looks at a city when he was expecting a field. Kelhari Supply Terminus is 340 kilometers long. It was not always. When my ancestors first came up out of the shelter networks, after the Vethion extraction machinery had gone quiet and the sealing signals had stopped broadcasting, what they found was a sealed vault complex stretching across the Kelhari Basin, 44 individual storage chambers, each one a kilometer wide, filled with extracted raw planetary material the Vethion had pulled from the crust, over 11 years of continuous operation. Ore concentrations, mineral compounds, processed base elements, sorted and sealed and waiting for collection. They had left the extraction machinery running on a low-draw maintenance cycle, intending to return. We found it. We studied it for 200 years before we touched it, because we were patient, and because we remembered what it cost to be impatient. When we understood the extraction science better than the machines that had built it, we drew the first gram from Vault Keth 9 and logged it. Name of the engineer, date, weight, intended use. Every gram that followed received the same entry. 520,000 years of entries. Varath Solon walked the length of Platform 1 with me and said very little. The active distribution rails ran above us, feeding the continental grid, the Varath feed lines, the Solon arterials, the great Keth throughways named, as everything at Kelhari is named, after the vault designations they were built to service. The eastern elevation of the terminus rises 40 stories above the basin floor. On a clear morning, from the upper observation deck, you can see the edge of the mega-city that grew up around the distribution network over the course of 300,000 years. Towers that make our own pre-stellar architecture look like a child's sketch. Warships in the transit lanes above them that are longer than the valley is wide. We built all of it from what the Vethion left in those 44 chambers. The vaults, Varath Solon said at last. Not a question, an observation. He had stopped walking. He was looking at the eastern rail, at the throughput monitors, at the scale of the operation, and something in his face had shifted from professional composure to a quieter and more honest expression. Emptied, I said. Over the course of 490,000 years, the last gram was drawn from Vault Keth 44 by my great-great-grandmother's predecessor. She logged it the same way the first gram was logged, because that was the standing order. He looked at me. All of it. All of it. Keth 9 through Keth 44, inclusive. 422 billion metric tons of extracted material, distributed across the following applications. I handed him the archive index. It was a physical document. We had printed it for the occasion, because the Terminus archive in full runs to a data volume that requires dedicated relay infrastructure to transmit, and I did not want him to miss the weight of it in his hands. He held it. He did not open it immediately. Your supply chain law, I said, because I had read the Vethan Logistics Authority Charter in full, which our linguists had reconstructed from the operating manuals left in the extraction machinery, requires a complete material accounting before any reclamation claim may be reinstated. The law specifies that if extracted material has been processed, converted, or incorporated into derivative infrastructure, the reclaiming authority must demonstrate that reclamation would not require the destruction of inhabited structures or active supply networks. I let that sit for a moment. 22 settled systems are currently fed through distribution infrastructure, derived from material drawn from those vaults. 412 billion people. The derivative chain runs from the first ore, pulled from Keth 9, in our third post-emergent century, through to the throughput rail above us, which was commissioned 14 years ago. The archive documents every link. Vereth Solon opened the index. He turned several pages, stopping at the summary tables my staff had prepared. The ones that show, at a glance, how many generations of use each gram had passed through before reaching its current form. How many inhabited structures now incorporate derivative material. How many of our people depend on supply networks whose foundation stones were cast from Vethan ore. He was quiet for a long time. We did not know, he said, that anyone was here. No, I said. You left extraction machinery and sealed vaults, and a resupply window of indefinite length, and you did not send anyone to check. Not an accusation, a fact. The Vethanon Authority's own documentation, recovered from the machinery, contained no provision for the possibility of an inhabited world developing in the interim. Because when they sealed the vaults, we were not yet what we would become. We were shelter network survivors in the deep rock, waiting for the surface to be livable again. They had not looked closely enough to see us. We had used the time well. The accounting is complete, I said. The claim cannot be reinstated under your own law without destruction of inhabited infrastructure and active supply networks, which your law additionally prohibits. Our legal compact filing was transmitted to the authority's registered address, the same address printed on the resupply order, 4,000 years ago, when our linguists first finished reconstructing the charter. We have been waiting for someone to come and receive it in person. He looked up from the index. For a moment, I thought he was going to say something about the 4,000 years. He did not. We will need to verify the archive, he said. Of course, I said. We have guest quarters in the Terminus administrative block. The archive relay is rated for full Vethan documentation protocol. My staff will assist. He nodded. He was still holding the index. I left him there for a moment and walked to the edge of Platform 1, where the railing gives a clean view down the length of the eastern basin. The morning light was coming in low and golden over the city to the east, catching the transit lane warships at altitude, making their hulls look briefly like mirrors. The Varath feedline throughput was still reading 0.5% low. I made a note to have Section 44 looked at again before end of shift. The Vethan Logistics Reclamation Authority remained at Kelhari for 11 days. Their verification team confirmed the archive in full. Not one disputed entry in 520,000 years of logs. On the morning of the 12th day, Vereth Solon signed the formal acknowledgement of non-reinstatement and filed it with the planetary grid. He shook my hand before he boarded. Vethanine do not typically touch other species. I noted it. The archive, he said. Every gram. Every gram, I said. Standing order. He went up the ramp, and the hatch sealed behind him, and the auditor ship lifted cleanly out of the basin on its own thrust. I watched it go, then walked back inside to the Section 44 maintenance report, which my morning shift engineer had left on my desk, with a note that the throughput issue was a worn coupling on the eastern spur and would take 2 hours to replace. I signed the repair order and went to make coffee. The Terminus had fed 22 systems for 520,000 years, on what the Vethan left behind. It would feed them tomorrow, and the day after, and the year after, and the century after. We had built too well and remembered too carefully for anything less. That was what the standing orders were for. That was what we had always been for.